have in that part of the world, since it was not the way to or from any part of the world where the English had any traffic. And I knew there had been no storms to drive them in there in distress, and that if they were really English, it was most probable that they were here upon no good design, and that I had better continue as I was than fall into the hands of thieves and murderers. Let no man despise the secret hints and notices of danger which sometimes are given him when he may think there is no possibility of its being real. That such hints and notices are given us, I believe, few that have made any observation of things can deny. That they are certain discoveries of an invisible world, and a converse of spirits, we cannot doubt. And if the tendency of them seems to be to warn us of danger, why should we not suppose they are from some friendly agent? Whether supreme or inferior and subordinate is not the question, and that they are given for our good. The present question abundantly confirms me in the justice of this reasoning. For had I not been made cautious by the secret admonition, come it from whence it will, I had been done inevitably, and in a far worse condition than before, as you will see presently. I had not kept myself long in this posture till I saw the boat draw near the shore, as if they looked for a creek to thrust in at, for the convenience of landing. However, as they did not come quite far enough, they did not see the little inlet where I formerly landed my rafts, but ran their boat on shore upon the beach at about half a mile from me, which was very happy for me, for otherwise they would have landed just at my door, as I may say, and would soon have beaten me out of my castle, and perhaps have plundered me of all I had. When they were on shore, I was fully satisfied they were Englishmen, at least most of them. One or two I thought were Dutch, but it did not prove so. There were in all 11 men, whereof 3 of them I found were unarmed and, as I thought, bound. And when the first 4 or 5 of them were jumped on shore, they took those 3 out of the boat as prisoners. One of the 3 I could perceive using the most passionate gestures of entreaty, affliction, and despair, even to a kind of extravagance. The other 2 I could perceive lifted up their hands sometimes, and appeared concerned indeed, but not to such a degree as the first. I was perfectly confounded at the sight, and knew not what the meaning of it should be. Friday called out to me in English as well as he could, "Oh, master, you see Englishmans eat prisoners as well as savage mans." "Why, Friday," says I, "do you think they're going to eat them then?" "Yes," says Friday, "they will eat them." "No, no," says I, "Friday, I'm afraid they will murder them indeed, but you may be sure they will not eat them." All this while I had no thought of what the matter really was, but stood trembling with the horror of the sight, expecting every moment when the 3 prisoners should be killed. Nay, once I saw one of the villains lift up his arm with a great cutlass, as the seamen call it, or sword, to strike one of the poor men, and I expected to see him fall every moment, at which all the blood in my body seemed to run chill in my veins. I wished heartily now for the Spaniard and the savage that had gone with him, or that I had any way to have come undiscovered within shot of them, that I might have secured the 3 men, for I saw no firearms they had among them. But it fell out to my mind another way. After I had observed the outrageous usage of the 3 men by the insolent seamen, I observed the fellows run scattering about the island, as if they wanted to see the country. I observed that the 3 other men had liberty to go also where they pleased, but they sat down all 3 upon the ground, very pensive, and looked like men in despair. This put me in mind of the first time when I came on shore, and began to look about me, how I gave myself over for loss, how wildly I looked round me, what dreadful apprehensions I had, and how I lodged in the tree all night for fear of being devoured by wild beasts. As I knew nothing that night of the supply I was to receive by the providential driving of the ship nearer the land by the storm and tide, by which I have since been so long nourished and supported. So these 3 poor desolate men knew nothing how certain of deliverance and supply they were, how near it was to them, and how effectually and really they were in condition of safety, at the same time that they thought themselves lost and their case desperate. So little do we see before us in the world, And so much reason have we to depend cheerfully upon the great Maker of the world, that he does not leave his creatures so absolutely destitute, but that in the worst circumstances they have always something to be thankful for, and sometimes are nearer deliverance than they imagine. Nay, are even brought to their deliverance by the means by which they seem to be brought to their destruction. It was just at high water when these people came on shore, and while they rambled about to see what kind of place they were in, they had carelessly stayed till the tide was spent, and the water was ebbed considerably away, leaving their boat aground. They had left 2 men in the boat, who, as I found afterwards, having drunk a little too much brandy, fell asleep. However, one of them waking a little sooner than the other, and finding the boat too fast aground for him to stir it, hallooed out for the rest, who were straggling about, upon which they all soon came to the boat, but it was past all their strength to launch her, the boat being very heavy, and the shore on that side being a soft oozy sand, almost like a quicksand. In this condition, like true seamen, who are, perhaps, the least of all mankind given to forethought, they gave it over, and away they strolled about the country again. And I heard one of them say aloud to another, calling them off from the boat, "Why, let her alone, Jack, can't you? She'll float next tide." By which I was fully confirmed in the main inquiry of what countrymen they were. All this while I kept myself very close, not once daring to stir out of my castle any further than to my place of observation near the top of the hill, and very glad I was to think how well it was fortified. I knew it was no less than 10 hours before the boat could float again, and by that time it would be dark, and I might be at more liberty to see their motion and to hear their discourse, if they had any. In the meantime, I fitted myself up for a battle as before, though with more caution, knowing I had to do with another kind of enemy than I had at first. I ordered Friday also, whom I made an excellent marksman with his gun, to load himself with arms. I took myself 2 fowling pieces, and I gave him 3 muskets. My figure, indeed, was very fierce. I had my formidable goatskin coat on, with the great cap I have mentioned, a naked sword by my side, 2 pistols in my belt, and a gun upon each shoulder. It was my design, as I said above, not to have made any attempt till it was dark, but about 2 o'clock, being the heat of the day, I found that they were all gone straggling into the woods, and, as I thought, laid down to sleep. The 3 poor distressed men, too anxious for their condition to get any sleep, had, however, sat down under the shelter of a great tree, at about 1/4 of a mile from me, and, as I thought, out of sight of any of the rest. Upon this I resolved to discover myself to them, and learn something of their condition. Immediately I marched as above, my man Friday at a good distance behind me, as formidable for his arms as I, but not making quite so staring a spectre-like figure as I did. I came as near them undiscovered as I could, and then, before any of them saw me, I called aloud to them in Spanish. "What are ye, gentlemen?" They started up at the noise, but were 10 times more confounded when they saw me, and the uncouth figure that I made. They made no answer at all, but I thought I perceived them just going to fly from me, when I spoke to them in English. "Gentlemen," said I, "do not be surprised at me. Perhaps you may have a friend near when you did not expect it." "He must be sent directly from heaven then," said one of them very gravely to me, and pulling off his hat at the same time to me, "for our condition is past the help of man." "All help is from heaven, sir," said I, "but can you put a stranger in the way to help you? For you seem to be in some great distress. I saw you when you landed, and when you seemed to make application to the brutes that came with you, I saw one of them lift up his sword to kill you." The poor man, with tears running down his face and trembling, looking like one astonished, returned, "Am I talking to God or man? Is it a real man or an angel?" "Be in no fear about that, sir," said I. "If God had sent an angel to relieve you, he would have come better clothed, and armed after another manner than you see me. Pray, lay aside your fears. I am a man, an Englishman, and disposed to assist you. You see, I have one servant only. We have arms and ammunition. Tell us freely, can we serve you? What is your case?" "Our case, sir," said he, "is too long to tell you while our murderers are so near us. But, in short, sir, I was commander of that ship. My men have mutinied against me. They have been hardly prevailed on not to murder me, and, at last, have set me on shore in this desolate place, with these 2 men with me, one my mate, the other a passenger, where we expected to perish, believing the place to be uninhabited, and know not yet what to think of it." "Where are these brutes, your enemies?" said I. "Do you know where they are gone?" "There they lie, sir," said he, pointing to a thicket of trees. "My heart trembles for fear they have seen us and heard you speak. If they have, they will certainly murder us all." "Have they any firearms?" said I. He answered, "They had only 2 pieces, one of which they left in the boat." "Well then," said I, "leave the rest to me. I see they are all asleep. It is an easy thing to kill them all, but shall we rather take them prisoners?" He told me there was 2 desperate villains among them that it was scarce safe to show any mercy to, but if they were secured, he believed all the rest would return to their duty. I asked him which they were. He told me he could not at a distance distinguish them, but he would obey my orders in anything I would direct. "Well," says I, "let us retreat out of view or hearing, lest they awake, and we will resolve further." So they willingly went back with me, till the woods covered us from them. "Look you, sir," said I, "if I ventured upon your deliverance, are you willing to make 2 conditions with me?" He anticipated my proposals by telling me that both he and the ship, if recovered, should be wholly directed and commanded by me in everything, and if the ship was not recovered, he would live and die with me in what part of the world soever I would send him, and the 2 other men said the same. "Well," says I, "my conditions are but 2. First, that while you stay in this island with me, you will not pretend to any authority here, and if I put arms in your hands, you will, upon all occasions, give them up to me, and do no prejudice to me or mine upon this island, and in the meantime be governed by my orders. Secondly, that if the ship is or may be recovered, you will carry me and my man to England passage free." He gave me all the assurances that the invention of faith of man could devise that he would comply with these most reasonable demands, and besides would owe his life to me, and acknowledged it upon all occasion as long as he lived. "Well then," said I, "here are 3 muskets for you, with powder and ball. Tell me next what you think is proper to be done." He showed all the testimonies of his gratitude that he was able, but offered to be wholly guided by me. I told him I thought it was very hard venturing anything, but the best method I could think of was to fire on them at once as they lay, and if any were not killed at the first volley, and offered to submit, we might save them, and so put it wholly upon God's providence to direct the shot. He said, very modestly, that he was loath to kill them if he could help it, but that those 2 were incorrigible villains, and had been the authors of all the mutiny in the ship, and if they escaped, we should be undone still, for they would go on board and bring the whole ship's company and destroy us all. "Well then," says I, "necessity legitimates my advice, for it is the only way to save our lives." However, seeing him still cautious of shedding blood, I told him they should go themselves and manage as they found convenient. In the middle of this discourse, we heard some of them awake, and soon after we saw 2 of them on their feet. I asked him if either of them were the heads of the mutiny. He said, "No." "Well then," said I, "you may let them escape, and Providence seems to have awakened them on purpose to save themselves. Now," says I, "if the rest escape you, it is your fault." Animated with this, he took the musket I had given him in his hand, and a pistol in his belt, and his 2 comrades with him, with each a piece in his hand. The 2 men who were with him going first made some noise, at which one of the seamen who was awake turned about, and seeing them coming, cried out to the rest, but was too late then, for the moment he cried out, they fired. I mean the 2 men, the captain wisely reserving his own piece. They had so well aimed their shot at the men they knew that one of them was killed on the spot, and the other very much wounded, but not being dead, he started up on his feet and called eagerly for help to the others. But the captain, stepping to him, told him it was too late to cry for help. He should call upon